Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome on into the second installment of Building Your Redstone Toolbox. In this episode, we will be looking at some redstone contraptions and circuits that will hopefully help you improve some of your redstone builds. There is a few basic circuits here and a few more complicated ones. Some of these you will use, some of these you will have never seen before, some of these you may never need ever. However, having the knowledge of these contraptions can make doing your redstone a lot easier. I'm going to start all the way. You can see there's quite a lot here. There is quite a lot here, and as per usual, this will be available as a well download. So if you want to come in and have a look at these in further detail, you are more than welcome. Just head onto the description, grab a well download, and tinker along. And grab it before we start the video even, and that way you can follow along in the video. You can play with it. But let's all start from the start of the list. There is literally no order to what I've got these in. I've just placed them all down into, well, I've organized them, but there's no order. So let's start with the start of the sorters at the very start. This is a very simple one that a lot of people will be using. It's probably one of the most common ones outside of wiring that you will be using in your builds. A lot of people need automatic storage systems, and this is probably the most recognizable one. This is Impulse SV's storage system. It is a stage 3 storage system, and it's as simple as putting items into this filter. You put in items here that you probably want to name these something like filter item, just in case, because if you get purple wool come through here, it will break it. But if it gets a redstone repeater coming through, let me grab some redstone repeaters and we can show you exactly what it will do. They will come through, and every single time one of those goes into this hopper, it will increase the signal to stage 3, which will then power the redstone repeater, which will depower or unpower the redstone torch, unlocking this hopper and allowing the item to travel through into the storage unit. You can put in as many items as you want. We could put in a bunch of different items into this, and it will just keep going. As you see, that one there has unpowered now, allowing those to go through. Once those ones there have all gone through, it will then power back on and allow the next item to go through as so. This is probably the most basic and simple one. There is a slightly easier one, well, slightly smaller one. This here is a stage 2 version. Now, this one here uses one less redstone. It is slightly smaller. However, it is not tileable. You cannot put them next to each other. Well, you can. However, if this hopper receives too many items, it will make a stage 3 signal, which will leak over into the next hopper, unlocking it. So if you do use a stage 2 item sorter, you want to make sure that you do not have them directly next to each other, or otherwise it will leak across. And if you are trying to move items just a little bit faster than using a hopper line, as you know, a hopper can move 2.5 items every second. However, if you want to move them a little bit faster using something like a dropper, or maybe you've got a farm that produces a little bit more coming out of it, more than 2.5, then you want to use something that can move the items a little bit faster. In which case, we are going to have these hoppers facing straight down. That way, this hopper can push an item out, and this hopper can pull it out, meaning you can move items twice as fast. Now, the difference here is you will have to have the second hopper completely full of the item that you are going to be filtering through. And otherwise, if you remove this one here, you'll see that these items will be pulled out. Sorry, no, they will get pushed out. They will get pushed out. So you need to make sure that they don't get pushed out. And yeah, so this one here needs to be full. And is that going to go down to, oh, okay, yep, so you can see the problem. You can see the problem here. You need to make sure this hopper here is completely full, and that way they can now go down, boom, double speed item sorter. If any of these components are slightly confusing and maybe you didn't know about the functions of any components in Redstone, be sure to check out the first video in this series, Building Your Redstone Toolbox Redstone Components. I will have that linked in the description also, and if I remember, I'll put a little card up on the top of the screen. I'll see if I can remember that. I should be able to remember that. Doesn't sound like it's too hard. And that there should be able to give you an understanding on some of these items. The next one we're going to have is wiring. Now, wiring is not going to be exclusive just to the redstone wire, which, as you know, is probably the easiest or probably the most obvious way to move a signal. Using a wire, the signal will come through. If you weren't aware, you can also power a block and get that signal out using a repeater. You can also do it the other way around. If you remove this block here, you can also power that block and get the signal to come out with redstone. What you cannot do is you cannot get a redstone signal out of a redstone signal. You need to make sure it has got a repeater on one of the sides of that block. Another way to get some power transfer is using rails. When the rails power on using this repeater, they will then get signal from the observer, which will send power through to the other rails. So you can use this in a wide array of applications. This is one that not many people know of. This one is a very, very uncommon one. I don't see it used anywhere, and it is called leaf stone. When you put a log next to leaves, the leaves will register that there is a log nearby, and that there will change its state, and the observer will pick this up, which will then send a signal out. Leaf stone, very, very rarely used, and by memory, it can go up to 5 leaf blocks across. So it's not an infinite trail. You can't do it for 64 blocks or something like that. However, this is a very, very useful application. Just to note, if you do break the line of leaves, it will not work. So it has to be a full line of leaves. You can use any leaves. You can use pale oak, you can use jungle, you can use acacia. It does not really matter. Cherry leaves, you can use whichever ones you want. This is a very, very cool little contraption, and this one here is an instant redstone wiring signal. So this here will work. You can make as many of these for as far as you want, as long as they stay in render distance, of course. And you can make that, you can make this 128 blocks long if you can, and go around in big circles, and it will be instant. There is no delay, so you don't have to worry about the repeater delay. You don't have to worry about redstone torch delay or observers or none of that. There is zero delay on this. It is an instant power signal. This can be very useful when you're using things like when you're doing world eaters and stuff like that. Obviously, you wouldn't have redstone dust on a world eater. However, if you're trying to use an instant power signal and you want a bunch of different things to all work at the exact same time, this is a very, very useful feature. More options are, obviously, we have the boring lever, you know, just I don't even know why I've got that one there, to be honest, because it's pretty much the same as the button, it's just a lever. But here's another one. You may see these a lot in redstone builds, because this one here, unlike a redstone torch will put a power signal out around it. So, not a redstone torch, a redstone block will always have a power source to it. However, a cauldron will only provide a signal when it is being picked up by a comparator. So these here are very, very useful. You will see that in the next build right here, because this here will not be powering anything else around it. It will not be able to bud power. It will not be able to power anything unless it is being read by a comparator. This does need to be full of water, and it is the only container I can think of that you can actually move with a piston. You can't move furnaces, you can't move chests, barrels, shulker boxes, any of those other things, and since you can't move those, you can't bring them up to a comparator and then remove them. This is why a cauldron is such a useful feature in redstone. If anybody has ever heard some of those technical players talk about an RS-Latch or an RS-Latch, And it sounds like, what is that? That sounds really, really complicated. It's actually really, really simple. The R stands for reset and the S stands for set. So what you can do is you can, let's say this here is the power output you want to use. You can set it using this input here, and it does not matter how many times you try to set it, it is already set, and it will need to be reset. It is a latch, like a gate, you know. If you set it, it will stay set. So this is what you do to make things Grian proof. You can keep setting it as many times as you want. It will not do anything until it gets another signal to reset the system. There's quite a few different ways to do this. This is another one using droppers, which will send this dropper item into there. So it doesn't matter how many times, that dropper's got nothing in it, so it can't send it into there. Therefore, it is now set. And if you want to reset it, you have to put a signal through into the other side. Now, it doesn't normally need two outputs. A lot of the time, this will just have one output, which will be the set, which will be, yeah, just the one output. However, you can use both sides. This one is a very complicated tileable system, which I find to be very useful when you only want one signal. So what you can do is you can push a button and it will reset everything, and then it will set it to the one that you want. So if you want to be able to push a button to go to a certain place, or you want to be able to push a button to use a certain farm or to open a certain door, and you want everything else to be turned off at the same time, you can reset it and then it will set it. So this is, I honestly, I can't remember where I found this, who built it. I cannot take credit for this one. However, I do know that it is a very useful contraption for people wanting to reset and set a very large amount of stuff, as it is all completely tileable. The only issue with this one is it can only be 15 blocks long because of the redstone signal that goes out the back in order to reset everything. If this here goes longer than 15 blocks, it won't be able to reach the other side. And the way it works is honey blocks and slime blocks do not stick together, and it uses the cauldrons. It's, look, if you ever need to use one of these, you're probably more advanced than I am anyway. So yeah, this is a really, really cool one there. And here is a vertical RS-Latch. Now, either one of these can be the input and either one of these can be the output. Let's say this is the set. You can set it, and no matter how many times you try and set it, it will not do anything until you reset it. It can work the opposite way around as well. You can keep trying to set it as many times as you want, and it will not revert until you reset it. This is another really, really cool and very slimline design. This one here has the benefit of being quartzless. It does not need comparators like this one here does. It does not need pistons. It is a very cheap, very, very cheap way to create yourself an RS-Latch. Just a disclaimer as well, not all of these contraptions are mine, and they are not comprehensive. There is hundreds and hundreds of other ways to make RS-Latches. There's hundreds of more ways to, well, maybe not hundreds more ways to move wiring, but I can think of a couple other cool ways to move wiring. There's a lot more sorters, like your multi-item sorters, your MIS. There's plenty of other contraptions out there. This is just a small amount, just a handful, just to get you going if you don't know anything. Let's say you want to have a small clock in your build. You can utilize this. You can come to this world and you can go, oh, this is what I need here. I just need something that that toggles nice and slowly, nice and consistently, and you can go through all of those. This is probably the smallest one. Other ones we've got are ones like this. This is an, oh no, she's broken. What did I do with this one? Okay, don't ask about that one. I'll have to have a look at that one. That's meant to be an RS-Latch. I think that by doing, oh, you got to reset it. You got to reset it. I remember now. Yep. So once all these items go through to the other side, we should be able to reset it, and it will. No. Wait, do the flicky ticky thingy. Okay. There we go. Yep, she's working now. So that one there is now working across. Yeah, that one there's a little bit more of a more complicated one, but that's an RS-Latch clock. This is the exact clock I used for my resin farm. I designed it so that it would go 100 ticks, which is exactly 5 seconds, which is the duration in which you can hit a creaking. So I've made this one here to go 100 ticks in a constant circle to pulse through all of my resin farm pulsifiers. Very, very simple, and yeah, I thought it was probably the easiest way to do it. There might have been easier ways. We could also use things like this one here, which is a piston variant of an etho clock. Instead of using sticky pistons, it uses regular pistons, and it will shuffle that block across every time the items have all gone through the hopper, also known as a hopper clock. The vertical version of it is as simple as this one here. This is probably the most recognizable one, either that one or this one here, the flatter version. And then let's say that you want to have it completely, like you want to cover the whole thing with carpets. You won't be able to put carpets on top of this because the piston head will move, breaking said carpets. This design here, you can cover the entire thing up. So there's just slightly different versions of each other. This one here, as I said, is the flat version of the etho clock. And this one is when you add 2 clocks together. This one here can multiply the time. So this one here won't be able to move items unless all of this has gone. So it will have to go through an entire cycle before any item moves through. This can be done, well, almost infinitely. I saw Mumbo Jumbo once, he did one, and it was like 5 or 6 of them, and it ended up being billions of years. It's actually ridiculous how much time you can get out of that. I don't think you're going to really need more than 3 of those, because the amount of time you can get through them is insane. The most used clock I reckon I've ever seen is the comparator clock. It is as simple as getting a signal to go through the back, and as we know that if we put it into subtract mode, the comparator, if we put a comparator into subtract mode, it will subtract the side signal from the rear signal. 15 minus 15 will give you 0, and it'll output a signal of 0, and then it just keeps repeating itself, giving you a very simple clock. Other faster clocks that we have discussed in the previous video is the observer clock. It moves very, very fast. Fantastic for when you're trying to push items out at a great rate. And this one here is another very, very fast clock. It powers that torch very, very quickly, puts the block in the right place very, very quickly. Like I said, this isn't comprehensive. There is plenty of more clocks. You've also got the minecart clock. It's probably not the most reliable, but it is a clock regardless. Look, it even goes round and around, even if it is going in the wrong direction. I just realized it's going anti-clockwise. It's still a clock. Don't even care. There are plenty more designs out there. These are just a few basic ways to time systems or to get regular pulses. They're basic clocks. If you want another video on clocks, I do have another video in my How to Redstone series. Again, I'll try to remember to put that one up into the cards up the top. Pulse limiters and pulse generators are virtually the same thing. It just depends on what its input is. If your input from a pulse for a pulse generator, if your input is a lever or a button, it is a pulse generator. If your input is a constant redstone signal from another contraption, it'll then be a limiter. It will limit the signal coming in. So it's pretty much the same thing. As you can see on this one here, what it does is the signal goes through this block here, and then once it does that, it powers this piston, which also removes it out of the way. So if you flick this lever here, you can see that the pulse on the redstone dust just here, if you look at that one there, it goes very, very quickly, which is not enough time to register that piston. However, if you want a very, very quick pulse, it is a very useful contraption to use. Depending on your application, you will use one of these ones. They work, as you can see, these two are pretty much just T flip-flops with the pulse generator on it. That's all. I'm just using these here just to show you how they work. You don't actually need these on the back. It's just this former bit here, just showing you how you can generate a pulse. Another way you can do it, get a constant redstone signal coming in. It will then give a observer output really, really quickly, pulsing away, and then once it goes off, there is no longer any pulse. If you wanted to do it on the off, you could use this one here. So if it's on the down, what do you call that one? If you call it on the fall, you could use this one here. So that way it can be pulsed, it can be generated on the whole time, and then as soon as it turns off, it will then do a signal like that. Unlike this one, which will do it on the rise. Once the signal goes in, it will generate a pulse, and when it goes down, no pulse. Other simple ones you can use is using a piston to remove the block, so that way you can then have a quick pulse that will go out. You can then also use a button. That's probably this one here is not a limiter. This one is clearly not a limiter, because if the redstone signal comes in, it will just power that whenever the redstone signal comes in. So this one here is a pulse generator. Other really simple ones is you can use something like this, which when the torch is powered, it will power this, which will turn that off. However, if you flick this lever, it will turn that torch off, which will then power it just for a moment before the repeater catches up, which will then unpower it. This one here is a wire breaking circuit, so it will break the wire line by putting a block in the way, which again just creates a small pulse. So you can have a constant pulse going into this, doesn't matter how strong, doesn't matter how long, it will only give out a very short, very quick pulse when it is activated. The other really, really good one is using a dropper hopper. You can power the dropper, which will then put the block into the hopper, giving you an output, and then immediately the hopper will return the item back to the dropper. Just as simple as that. And as you saw, can you turn off, please? Thank you, sir. And then as you saw, this one here is the same as the one with the observer. Right, where is it? There, right there, that observer, except it will always pulse on the fall. Pulse extenders are used when you get yourself a pulse limiter, but you want to get it to be a little bit longer. So this is probably the biggest and longest one I've seen for the amount that you get out of it. But when you put a signal in, the repeaters will keep powering the block in front of it, which will then power the redstone next to it. And so this here can create a long, as you see, the button is now up and the light is still turned on. Why is that one broken? You silly goose. So that will produce a signal even though the button has been turned off, because the repeaters are still traveling as it takes them 4 redstone ticks to get to the next one. So that one there, and that one there is fairly extensive, although you can only go up to 15 blocks long. I think one of the really greatest pulse extenders you can use, also great for a clock, is using one of these. It will power the dropper using this RS-Latch here. So you can power that. Doesn't matter how many times you power it, because you've got an RS-Latch right here, and it will wait until it is reset with that one there, which will happen once all of these items have transferred back and forth. This one here is set to be, a bit shorter. And so this one here, there you go. As you can see, that one there has now reset itself, and it is going to be going back. However, the item is back into there, which has locked that one, and it is ready to go. This one here, if you have exactly 10 items in here, will take you 20 items, because the items are going to go there and then they have to go back, which will be 20 times 2.5, which is 50 game ticks, also known as about 2.5 seconds. So this one here will power on for approximately 2.5 seconds, and then it will turn off. Why do I missing a repeater right there? You goober. Let's try that one again. And there we go, and it should turn back on again very, very quickly. Have I got my times mixed up? No, I don't. Let's try that again. One more time. Why is it all broken when I go to show people? My wordy lordy, because I got that item in there, I got that item in there. That should go to there. Okay, so if I push that button, it should put the item into there. Oh. Don't even ask. Don't even ask. I don't even know what was going on there. As you see, it took about 2.5 seconds, and then now it is all done. I don't know why. I think it's because when I copied these across, some of the redstone dust may have fallen off, and that was a big goober movement of mine. This one here is very similar. It uses another RS-Latch, so you can power this hopper here, putting an item into this one, which will then give a comparator output, which will unlock the clock. We got 25 items, so that should take 10 seconds. I said 20. I said, oh god, my maths was way out, wasn't it? That was meant to be 4. Anyway, that should take 10 seconds to go one way, and then it'll take another 10 seconds to go the other way, which will power that. So this is it's an RS-Latch and a clock, creating a pulse extender. Probably the most well-known pulse extenders, also known as decay clocks, are using a bunch of comparators in a loop. As you can see here, all of these here will power on, and then they'll keep going around and around in a circle until they power off. This top one is an example of how not to set up your comparators, otherwise you will not get a decent decay out of it. The bottom one is a good decay. What it does is, every tick, it will take one tick for the signal to go through, one redstone tick, for the signal to go through each of these comparators. And then when it gets to here, it will output the same signal that it was receiving from the end. So if it was receiving 15 here, it will go to 15 here, and then it will drop to 14. It will then take one redstone tick, 2 redstone tick, 3 redstone tick, 4 redstone tick, 5 redstone tick, go through this one, and then it'll take 1 redstone tick for each of those, getting to here, and then the signal will then again drop. So this is the longest redstone clock you can, one of the longer versions you can make with this, because if you go only on one side, like this one here, it will decay. Oh, no, that's the broken one. That's the one to show you how not to do it. If you do it like this, if you do it like this one, this will give you half the duration of this one over here. I should probably put a third one over here so you can see how long it takes. Oh, well, you guys can fiddle around with it and you can figure it out and have some fun. This one is the longest you can push with a wooden button. As you see, by the time the signal gets all the way around to the end, the button has resurfaced. So you can't put any more repeaters, otherwise you will come up with this problem here, where they just loop-de-doop-de-doop-de around, trying to catch itself. Again, if you just watch the button, it will rise when that one there lights up. Boom. Just like that. If you do need a longer signal, you can use things like repeaters to try and extend the signal. Or you can put them back to back, like I have in the front here, in order to get, again, a longer extension. Other simple ways you can do it is, if you also want faster ways, you can also remove one of the sides by using a block, because it will always decay when you have 2 redstone next to each other. The signal goes in from the back, maintains the same signal coming out, and then drops one signal strength as it goes across the redstone. So on this one here, we've got 2 points where it can drop. This one we only have 1. So this one here will take twice as long to lower as this one right here does. Again, there are more pulse extenders out there. There are more complicated ones, and there's a lot more different variations you can do for these. You attach these to a smaller one to go into the bigger one with some repeaters, and you can get yourself some incredibly long times with them. But if you're really going to start going longer than that, I'd probably start using something like this. It gets a little bit smaller. Yeah, it gets a little bit smaller. And if any of this is interesting, remember, hit me up in the comments. Ask me questions. I'm not the biggest knower of all of the redstone, but I love mucking around with it. I love knowing stuff about it, and I might actually know some stuff that you may have questions for. So hit me up. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can get some more from myself. And enjoy the rest of the videos. One of the questions I get asked frequently is about logic gates. Now they can get a little bit complicated, but we'll try and keep it as simple as possible, starting with the AND gate. It's as simple as you need this signal and this signal before this will actually power on. There is many ways to make AND gates. I think I have another AND gate here. Yes, here we go. I knew it. Another AND gate. Another AND gate that is a very, very simple one. Doesn't matter which one of these you power on, you need both of them before it will work, because the piston will remove the redstone block out of the way if you do not have that one on, and if that one there is not on, well, obviously it's got no signal to go through it. So there's a couple AND gates right here. We'll just remove that one back out of the way. Another AND, that's the first AND gate. The next most common one is an OR gate. You want that signal or that signal. It does not matter which signal you put in, it will always get a signal output. It is an OR gate, that one or that one. Another one is an XOR gate. This one, you'll get a signal if one of them is on. However, if it is off, you'll get no signal. And if both of them are on, you get no signal. I personally am not the biggest on logic circuits. I don't know much about building computers and stuff like that, but I know that these get used a fair bit with a lot of logic stuff. I personally have not yet found a need for these, but again, I'm not the biggest into those thingies. A NOR gate is the opposite of an OR gate. It's a not OR gate. So if this one here is on, or this one here is on, it will not give out a signal. If neither of them have signals, it will give out a signal. So it is not OR, a NOR gate. Another NOR gate is as simple as this one here. Doesn't matter which one you power on, it will not give out a signal if either of them are powered. Not giving out a signal for that one or that one, not OR. We went through that AND gate already, and this one here is a very simple NOT gate. So you combine a NOT gate with an OR gate and you get this. Signal goes through, and it does not if you give a signal to the side. A NOT gate. There are, again, way more circuits out there. There is heaps of more ways you can build these, but these are probably some of the simpler ways to do it, and it should give you an easy understanding of what their function is, so you can fiddle around and make your own logic gates, or maybe you can just understanding how they work, really. The introduction of the copper bulb has made T flip-flops so easy. With the T flip-flop, it's as simple as you can put a signal in and it will turn on. You can put another signal in and it will turn off. It's kind of like having a lever instead of a button. Sorry, a button instead of a lever, but having it act as if it is a lever. You turn it on like you would a lever, and then if you push it again, it will turn off. There's a few different ways you can do this. Like there is the old school method of using a pulse limiter in order to get the signal to go out and power that using a redstone block. Again, you could probably use a cauldron with a comparator output if you wanted to, but this is probably just the smallest, easiest way. This is virtually the same thing as we did before, using the pulse limiter, and by using that pulse limiter, we are using it to push a block across to power it as a T flip-flop. This one here is a hopper locker T flip-flop. So hopper locker. It is a repeater locker. So the first signal goes through and then the second one will lock it. However, it still has enough strength to just barely get a signal out, giving the piston a chance to move. So that is another really simple T flip-flop. This one here obviously requires quartz. This one requires quartz. This one requires sticky pistons, or it requires a sticky piston for that one. You could use a falling piston using a sand block or something for that one. This one here does not require any of those. It is just repeaters. So it is a little bit cheaper on the quartz side. If you've got no quartz, you can use something like that. Another simple one is using a piston to move the block out of the way just as it receives the signal. So it doesn't get the signal long enough for the piston to stay extended, meaning it will always push out said block. Again, there is other ways to make T flip-flops. These are just some of the more basic ones. I think I used this one here in I don't know how many applications, and same with this one. Again, I don't know how many applications, and then they introduced the copper bulb, and it changed everything. A fantastic way to be moving items is using a dropper. As you know, when you get your mob farm and you get a bunch of items all going into the hopper lines, maybe you want to push them out into a water stream. So you can use something as simple as a dropper clock, which would, with this one here, is just a repeater. Sorry, a comparator clock, which goes back into, once there is a signal inside the dropper, it will give the signal out, powering it, and then it will just keep pumping those out until, I should clean that up, shouldn't I? So this is probably one of the more common ones people use. Other ones I quite like, this one here is using a repeater. A repeater, Nip, get your words right. It uses observers. This one here is obviously a little bit louder. However, I personally like this because it is a dustless contraption. I prefer dustless. Another way you can orient this one. This one here is using the signal from the observer to go into that hopper. However, if you do not have however, the hopper comes in from the side, you could probably use a design similar to this one here, which has it coming in from the top. So you can orient these in many different ways. The other really great use of hoppers and their clocks is making a drop evader, which we did discuss very small, lightly. We discussed it very lightly. I don't know what the word is there in the previous video. But what you can do is you can put a bunch of hoppers on top of each other. Oops, don't do that. And you can do like this, and you can make a long tower of them all going up. And you can now get all of these items to pump out the top. Using a comparator clock out the side here, again, you could probably use another system with the observers, but I've just got myself a comparator clock, which then sends a signal which gets hit by these observers and just goes up all the way to the top until all of the items get shot out. If you don't have that many observers, or you want to be a bit poor, I understand that feeling, you could also use it's a bit wider. It is a little bit wider, but you could use a tower. The only problem with this one is you can't go too tall because the signal strength will run out once you get to 15 blocks tall. Actually, yeah, it will. Yes, this will run out if you go more than 15 blocks tall. And yeah, so that one there, you can't go as high, and it is a little bit more bulky. It's got all the redstone. Also, the redstone dust particles can produce a little bit of lag, so this one here is probably a little bit better. But either way, whatever method you use, again, there is more methods out there. There is hundreds of different ways to do these things. There is never an incorrect way. There is just inefficient ways. And as long as it works, then it's done correctly. I have so many things in my world that people have said, you know, there's easier ways, you know that, and it's just like, yeah, there is, but I did it this way. Why? Because that's the way I came up with in my head when I built it, and it works, so it stays. If I want to make it smaller, I can try and make it smaller, but hey, if it works, it's correct. That's the main thing. Something I've used in a few mini games I've built in the past are randomizers. I had to use this on my fishing game on YOLOcraft a while ago, and the good thing about these ones here is they are tileable. You can put them right next to each other and they will not interfere with the other one. What they use is they use a wooden axe or any tool. You can use any tool. All of these will give out a redstone signal of 3. And because of that, if you use one next to it, it'll only get to 3. And if you put one next to it, that would have to be 4, so it will not interfere. So you can tile these all next to each other, which is absolutely fantastic. If you would like to put them like this, you can also do it like that. All it is doing is it's giving a redstone signal through into this dropper, which pushes the item into the hopper, which then immediately gets transferred back into the dropper. And depending on what item gets pushed out, because as some of you may know, a dropper randomly chooses which item it's going to push out. So it might put out the lever, it might put out the wooden axe. You don't know. It's going to be random. If it pushes out the lever, you'll get a redstone signal of 1. can you give me a redstone? Thank you. Redstone signal of 1. And if it pushes out the axe, you get a redstone signal of 3. You can put them in this line. It really matters not. What this one here is doing is it's powering the hopper, which actually leaves it on for a little bit longer, as you can see, because it will power the hopper for the same duration as... Come on, give me another, give me the other one. There we go. So it will power it for a little bit longer than this one, because the hopper is not only going to be putting the item back in, sorry, the hopper is not only going to be powering the dropper, but it's also going to be locked for the duration of the pulse signal. So if you wanted to have it so that the item, random item output is locked into that random position, I'd recommend using this one, because it will lock that hopper, and so the hopper will not be able to return the item until it is unpowered, unlike this one, which will replace the item almost immediately. A very, very old school way of randomizing. You can put an entity inside of a pen, and you put a pressure plate. That's as simple as that. Because the AI, the pathfinding of these mobs, I don't know what words are, these mobs is completely random. So you might get if you get a chicken in here, you could use a zombie, you could use a creeper, you could use a chicken, a goat, a cow, does not really matter. And it would be completely random. These are pretty good for when you just want literally no redstone except for, well, the output, but you don't want any redstone for the randomizer itself, and it is very, very, very random. It just depends on when the chicken or the mob itself walks onto the pressure plate, and it'll give you your output. While I was doing some research on randomizers, I did read up that you could use shulker boxes, because a shulker box will give out a signal from 0 all the way to 15, and it got me thinking. So I've designed this. Yes, there probably is smaller and easier ways to do it. However, I quickly slapped this together, and I thought this was really, really cool. Very, very simple. Obviously, I've got mine on a constant clock. However, what happens is the dropper will randomly put out any item. As you can see, it's got that one, then this one, then this one. It randomly chooses an item to be discarded out, and every time it does that, it will push out the item, giving a comparator output. So you can get a signal of, well, just look at the different ones. That's got 8, that's got 2, that's got 11, that one's got 9, that one's got 10, this one's got a lot less. So you can get 9 different outputs from this. There probably is a way so you can get all 15 out of one. I haven't fiddled with it that much. However, just the fact that you can get 15 different output signals from a shulker is a really, really, really cool thing. You can get a lot of different outputs, and not just 2. This one here will only give you 2 outputs. It'll either be 3 or 1. This one here will be on or off, and this one can be anywhere between 0 and 15. So depending on how much random you want and how many different outputs you want, one of these should be able to cover your needs. The last circuit we've got in this video is a piston feed tape. These are good for, well, a great array of things you're going to be doing. So this one here is a really, really cool way to move items in the nether. Because we're using a mud block or soul sand block, and we're using stairs, we can put because these blocks here aren't actually full blocks. They are slightly shorter. These here are slightly shorter than 1 block. So if you throw any items down, they'll either get hooked in the stairs or in the mud or soul sand blocks. And you can move items around in the nether, it's really, really cool. I know I've used these a couple times when you can't use water streams in the nether. Imagine not being able to get water in the nether. Couldn't be me. And yeah, absolutely fantastic way. They don't have to go in this. As long as you don't push the blocks more than 12, then you can make this as big as you want, up to 12, or as small as you want it to be. They can also be used for using a random, not a random signal, but you can use them for, I don't know, like there's a great many ways, great many applications. And how do you power them? Well, there's many ways you can do it. This one here just gives a signal every time that block moves. It pulses around, pushing that one there. That one there goes around very, very quickly. This one here is another way. This one here doesn't have an input, so it will just keep going around like that. If you want them to move really fast, you can use a 0-tick piston, which does it like that. So this one here will move a little bit faster. As you can see, every time the piston pushes, it gets retracted almost immediately. Unlike with this one here, the piston stays extended for a slight period of time. Another really, really cool one. Let me turn that one off real quickly. Another cool one. I like this one. This is a vertical one. So you can use this for moving blocks in a vertical pattern. And yeah, I'll just put these ones in here just as a display of what you can move around. Again, like, it depends on what you're building. You may never need... Why are you still running? Stop. Depends on what you're building. Depends what you're going to need. I can't think off the top of my head. I'm having a complete brain fart right now. But I know there are many reasons why piston feed tapes are going to be utilized. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But if you do need a piston feed tape, here's a few different ideas on how you can utilize them. And there you go. There is just a couple very simple, very basic redstone circuits that you can use in your builds. There is hundreds of others available. There is way more complicated circuits. I've left out heaps of different other variants. I know I didn't really cover the Autocrafter. I didn't really cover... What was another one I didn't really cover? I've got notes right next to me. Let me just have a look real quick. Can't see any others that are on there. That's just really the Autocraft that I didn't cover in this one. There is heaps more different things that we could cover. Like the MIS sorters, but that gets a little bit more complicated. There's also using a lectern to get signals out. There is also doing things with comparators to make adders and multipliers. You've seen people make computers in Minecraft. That's getting a little bit more complicated and a little bit more advanced and a lot bit over my head. I'm not there yet. If you want things like logic circuits to make computers, you want to go watch one of Matt Batwing's videos. That guy is insane. He has got so much. I've learnt so much from his, and everything I've learnt has gone in one ear and out the other because it's just so it's so much. There is so much. It really is insane. But the basics of a lot of redstone contraptions are in this. If you want to build something that has a quick pulse coming out of something that's got a long pulse, you can use a pulse limiter. If you want to turn that quick pulse into a long pulse, you can use a pulse extender. If you want to get a bunch of signals together to do certain things, you can use logic gates. And then if you want that to turn on and off, you use T flip-flops. If you want to activate your drop, like look at it. There is so much here. There is so many different circuits on different things, and hopefully they should just give you, just get your feet a little bit wet in the water so you can have some fun. Like I said, this video is, the video is watchable. The world is available for download. If you go look in the description, you will find a world download in there. I'm going to remember to do it as a zip file this time. So you can come in, you can have a look at these, you can tinker with them. If I spoke way too fast and you were like, I didn't understand it, you can come in, we didn't cover this one. Oh, this is just tileable. Oh, this is just making it, yeah, because these ones here are tileable. Yeah. So you can have two clocks right next to each other in case you ever wanted two clocks directly next to each other. That's the benefit of that one, which is why it is set up slightly differently to this one here. Jeez, I missed one. But yeah, so like exactly that. If you missed something and you want to go through it all, if you want to have a slightly better understanding of how any of these work, if you wanted to just come in and tinker, if you wanted to come in and grab yourself some of these circuits because you're building mini games in your world, look, world download's available. Again, any questions on any of these components, any of these circuits, hit me up in the comments section. If you want, you can come and join the Discord. I promise we don't bite too hard. You can come and join the Discord, come and ask me questions in there, come and join me on my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/sir_nipplington. Come and harass me on my stream. We can go through some of the redstone. I'm regularly going through my redstone testing world, and I love showing things. I don't always understand them comprehensively, but the benefit of going through them with an audience is we can troubleshoot together and we can learn, and we can, have a crack at it. Any questions, hit me up, and don't forget, hit that subscribe button so you can get some more videos on Redstone, and not amongst other things like my hardcore worlds, my stream collaborations with other friends and whatnot, and anything else I may come up with. Thanks for coming on down, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Ciao for now.